A sable circle of composite alloy arced around Corona Minor, the miniature star no wider than a planetary moon, yet hot enough to vaporize rock to vaporous ribbons. 19 rings hung about the glowing dwarf like silver ripples on a dark pond, each one stair-stepping out from the last, each threaded with its own magnetic rail, repair hangers, and gilded ornamentation. On calmer days, engineers and artists rode trolley pods between habitats, polishing the mirror-bright cladding so the micro-sunlight would dazzle passing diplomats. Today, calm was a memory. Today, the rings rang with war. Lady Mara Cassian, orbital knight of the auric halo, pulled her helm seals tight, felt them bite at her jaw, and stepped from the dorsal airlock of Bastion Aegis 12. Vacuum swallowed her voice. The only sound was the muted thrum through her bones as her impulse thrusters spooled up. Inside her visor, the tactical overlay traced blue trajectories, assessed threat clusters, and in the center showed the pulsing crimson beacon of a breached containment node. That node was one ring inward from her position, 200 kilometers along the track. If the rupture grew, it would belch hard radiation and shear every living thing on the surrounding decks to ash. She clicked her comm stud. Triad form, on me, shields broad, lances live. Two acknowledgments blinked from her partners, Circade Volantis, aggressive as a falling comet, and Dame Lyra Sun, whose steady aim had saved them more times than Mara cared to count. Beyond them streaked the enemy, cobalt silhouettes with wicked barbed armor, and what looked like trailing capes made of ionized gas. The Grav Cavaliers of the Thaloric Pride had arrived in force, riding distortion field discs that let them pirouette through microgravity. The Cavaliers had not come merely to skirmish. They meant to pry Corona Minor from humanity's grip, or failing that, burn it so neither side could claim the Forged Star's bounty. Mara flexed her gauntlet. A spiraling chain of white gold segments unfurled, each piece feeding power to the next until the whole line glowed, ready to hard lock into a single meter-long shaft. Knights called the weapon a lance, though it was half whip, half lightning bolt. Whatever the word, it could melt through 2 meters of starship hull. She gave her thrusters a pulse and shot toward the inner rail. Plasma sheaths vented in looping arcs from the broken node. The arcs reminded Mara of festive streamers, until they snatched a fleeing maintenance drone and dissolved it to glitter. Luminous, beautiful, lethal. She skated along the edge, using her armor's grav repulsors to keep from being tugged into the radiant tide. Off her starboard flared amber strobes. Cade had locked on a Cavalier and fired his lance in chaining mode. The weapon's first segment speared the foe's right forearm guard. With a sub-vocal command, Cade triggered the next segment, then the next, the links extending in a sizzling line that wrapped around the Cavalier's chest plate. When he yanked, the chain contracted, dragging both combatants into a tight orbit around one another. For a heartbeat, Knight and Cavalier spun like binary stars. Then Cade's shield flared argent, and the Cavalier's disc shattered beneath him. Enemy and machine tumbled away, red gas venting from a cracked helm. Mara's visor pinged proximity. A Thaloric rider swooped in from above, her disc's gravity bubble deflecting magnetized dust in twin spirals. This one wore commander markings, polished bone pauldrons, crest of interlocking talons. Her lance was already extended, sizzling citrine. Mara recognized her, Cavalier Marshal Shale Cree Threx, whom she'd debated across a conference hollow 3 months prior, trading quotes from ancient epics while their governments hissed at each other to hurry the paperwork. There had been courtesy in Shale Cree's voice then, genuine curiosity in her bright feline eyes. That courtesy was gone now. War erased many beautiful things. The Cavalier spoke, her words vibrating through a narrow laser comm. Bright night, I greet you at final dawn. Will you yield the forge, or must these rings scream apart? Mara reciprocated the laser beam, encoding her reply across the modulating light. I will yield nothing while my heart still beats. A sorrow, Shelcray replied. I would have learned your songs. She angled her disc, lunge imminent. Mara banked hard, kicking free of the rail and drifting across open void. Between them yawned one of Corona Minor's plasma streams, a 100-meter band of roaring, incandescent vapor. Mara could feel the heat even through her suit's ablatives. She snapped her chain to full staff and threw it in a lazy spin, scattering residual particles that might auto-ignite against armor cracks. Shalkree streaked along the plasma's far rim and cracked her own chain lance overhead. Segments locked, extended, then split again, taking on whip form. Green lightning spat between the links. She flung it forward, energy hungry for a target. Mara interposed her wrist shield, braced. The opposing lance slammed, spraying molten motes. Feedback jittered through Mara's limbs. Servo alarms shrilled from her vambrace. Her boots skidded on nothing, the repulsors struggling to find purchase in the weak residual gravity. She overcompensated and carved a micro-thruster arc to reorient. Shalkree tugged her whip free and vaulted high, trying to force Mara down into the stream. Mara countered by firing her hip jets in a spiral, using the centrifugal motion to fling her chain lance like a bola. The glowing links sailed end over end, bridging the gap, and in mid-flight Mara activated chaining mode, each link extending further, snake-like. The far tip snagged a maintenance spar on the inner ring. She snapped power through the line. It stiffened to a rigid rod, catapulting her across the gap in a shallow parabola. Sparks trailed her heels. She landed on a narrow gantry no wider than her shoulders. Bolts shrieked under her weight. Shalkree descended, inverted, riding her disc upside down so her cape curled like cometary dust. Again her whip lashed. Again Mara met it with angled shield planes, dispersing the blow into vectored thrust. But time gnawed at them both. The breach containment node pulsed hotter. Lines of control telemetry scrolled along Mara's right display. Stage B regulators at 90% failure. Coolant mass down 40%. If she did not end this quickly, the dwarf star would overfeed itself and boil the rings to slag. She spoke on wideband, voice echoing across half the battlefront. "Cade, Lyra, cut a path to the leak. I hold the marshal." "We can't," Lyra replied, breath harsh. "Cavalier pack pinning us. We're red across 6 boards." Cade added, "Give the word, we'll break formation, but we won't reach you intact." "Hold then," Mara said. "I'll clear the board." Shalkree's ears flicked behind translucent helm glass. "You play strategist on open channel?" "Bold." "Not strategy," Mara answered, swinging her lance into a high guard. "Promise." Their duel resumed, sharper. Shalkree's attacks came in triplets, faint low, whip wide, spear thrust to the helm. Each time Mara parried, but at cost, her shield integrity dropping from turquoise to rust orange. Recriminations from her armor AI scrolled like judgment. Mara considered her opponent. The Cavalier's disc gave her superior maneuverability, but it tethered her to a gravity node. Sever the disc's field coil, and she would sputter in free space, slower than a knight's thrusters. Unfortunately, the coil sat beneath reinforced plating. Frontal assault would only dull her lance before it bit through. There was, however, the stream. Mara waited for the next pass, then angled herself so Shalkree's disc would carry the Cavalier rightward toward the incandescent torrent. As lances met, Mara let Shalkree push her, let herself be driven across the narrow span of gantry until the metal sang red from heat creeping through. When sparks flared under her boots, Mara pivoted on her left toe, used the spin to wrap her chain once around the Cavalier's lance shaft, and invoked full transmit. Energy surged from Mara's fusion pack down the chain, across the locked weapons, and into Shalkree's hilt. The feedback detonated a microflare along the Thaloric's bracer, momentarily blinding sensors. Simultaneously, Mara kicked her suit's magnetic grapple deeper into the grating and hauled. The entangled lances shifted axis. Shalkree's momentum now pointed not into Mara, but across her, straight toward the plasma stream. For a breath, the whip lance went taut like a drawn bow. Then the chain links glowed white-hot and parted. Shalkree tumbled free, disc screeching alarms, trajectory decaying toward the roiling heat. Orange tongues licked willing prey. Mara could have watched the Cavalier burn. Many would have cheered. Instead, she cursed, slung a spare line, and snagged Shalkree by the offhand wrist. The jerk near tore Mara's shoulder from socket. Suit actuators popped like corn. But the Cavalier stopped short of the stream, boots dangling above the roaring glow. Wide eyes met across visors. Why? Shalkree asked, voice brittle over lasercom. Because honor isn't ash, Mara replied, forcing calm through burning joints. And because I still need your disc. At that moment, 4 more Cavaliers arrowed in, forming a claw around Mara's triad. Lyra's vitals spiked red, then went flat. A burst transmission of farewell cords cut short. Cade roared and fired interdiction rockets into the advancing wedge, holding brief space. 2 Cavaliers fell, but a third lanced Cade through the right thigh. He spun, blood crystals catching the infant sunlight. Mara's jaw trembled. Grief now. Later. She flipped her wrist, releasing Shalkree. The Cavalier landed on the gantry, jerking her disc to maintain altitude. You saved me, Shalkree said. Now claim your price? Not my price, our survival, Mara answered. Your forces breached the dwarf's cage. If containment fails, Corona Minor will erupt. None here will see tomorrow's sky. Shalkree flicked scorched braids from her helm. My admiralty believes you bluff. The microsun can be humbled and repurposed. Look at the telemetry, Mara sent, data streaming across the laser link. Waveforms told a grim tale. Core pressure exceeding design margin, feed regulators offline, automatic vent stacks slagged by weapons fire. Shalkree studied the figures, her ears flattened. Fury's jaws, she whispered. Call them off, Mara said. Not possible. Pride protocol. Advance until target captured or squadron destroyed. Then help me undo this yourself. Mara pointed to the failing node. We require 2 lances chained in opposite polarity. 1 knight, 1 cavalier. That will feed sufficient charge to restart the coolant pumps. I cannot trust, nor I, yet here we stand. Mara offered her gauntleted hand. Choose life, Shalkree. Firelight shimmered between them. At last, the cavalier clasped the proffered wrist. We duel no longer, Bright Knight. We ride together. Cade, bleeding but conscious, voxed a bitter laugh. Hell of a wedding, Commander. Hold fast, Mara replied, her tone gentler than command allowed. We're not done with you yet. She and Shalkree hooked thrusters and launched as paired comets toward the heart of the inner ring. Enemy and allied signatures alike dwindled behind them. For a span, there was only the stars' relentless roar and the vibration of their pulse jets as they wove through latticework ribs. The containment node loomed, a cracked sphere big as a throne room, its layered fields failing one by one. Streams of brute plasma vented through fissures. Each vent sent fractal lightning across the inner ring, peeling plating like fruit skin. Mara and Shalkree aligned at opposite poles of the rupture. Their lances extended, tips bright as newborn nova sparks. By practiced instinct, they engaged chaining mode. Mara's lance links hummed sapphire. Shalkree's glowed viridian. At a shouted sync, they threw the weapons, point to point. The tips clashed but did not rebound. Magnetolocks fused them as single line. Power readings spiked. Mara clenched her teeth. Begin counter phase. They overcharged in alternating pulses, each feeding opposed amplitude. The plasma stream between the ruptures shuddered, caught in new gravity sculpted by the lance's energy field. That stream bent, curled like a ribbon drawn between pinched fingers, then lapped back toward the sphere's surface. Superheated matter re-entered the node, knitting broken layers. But the feedback was monstrous. Currents bolted up the lance shafts, slammed suits with gigajoule spikes. Mara's augmented musculature seized. Blood vessels pricked behind her eyes. She bit through her lip. Still she held. Panels across the ring began to cool from white to jaundiced gold. Containment regained geometry, imperfect, yet stable enough to buy minutes. Pumps cycled once, twice, then roared to bass life as coolant gushed. Cade, Mara called. Status. Ragged but breathing. His icon limped away from a swath of debris where 3 Cavaliers drifted inert. Lyra's gone. I know. Grief threatened again. She banked it for now. Shalkree grunted through clenched fangs. Seal is holding. We must disengage or perish with it. On 3, Mara said. 1, 2. They yanked. The lances parted, releasing coiled energy that blossomed into a halo, then collapsed to a pinpoint no brighter than a candle. Quiet descended. Even the star's hum sounded muted, like breath after fever. Mara's visor displayed stabilizing readouts. Radiation tapered below lethal dose. She allowed herself a single exhale of triumph. Across the node, shale crease sagged against her disk, armor scorched. Containment sustained. Your people, my people, alive, for now. For now, Mara echoed. Silence stretched. Weapons teams on both sides drifted, uncertain. Battle rage cooled into the terrible confusion of what next. Mara patched to wideband. Knights of the Auric Halo, stand down, cease fire and attend wounded. Shile Cree matched the call in thaloric clicks and trills. Lances extinguished one by one. Grav discs powered low. Cade coasted near and saluted Shale Cree with bruised courtesy. Well met, Marshal. Hard-won truce, she replied, and fragile. From Bastion Control came a shaky voice. Commander Mara, High Command requests status. Tell them Corona Minor endures, she said, and that we are resuming minimum safe operations. Further orders pending diplomatic review. Behind her words lay a plea. Don't waste this fragile pause. Shalcree removed her helm, gasping at the acidic bite of burnt insulation, and drew a trembling breath. Without helm, her face seemed smaller, eyes older. Bright night, our blades may cross again. I cannot promise otherwise. Nor can I, Mara admitted. Yet I'll remember we stopped a star from dying. Shalcree's lips curved, part snarl, part smile. Then until fate demands, she dipped her disc, spiraling back toward her fleet's battered wedges. Her remaining Cavaliers formed a rearguard as they withdrew across the rings, leaving space littered with frozen sparks and drifting regrets. Cade toggled a private channel. Think Command will hang us for parlaying with the enemy? They can try, Mara said, though exhaustion weighted her voice. I'd like to see them find replacements willing to dance on plasma streams. Sir Cade laughed, winced, and drifted closer. Lyra would have loved that line. I'll carve it on her epitaph, Mara promised, bitterness iron on her tongue. Engineers swarmed now, magnet boots clanking, drones spitting sealant foam. The ring still gleamed, tarnished, scored, but wondrous beneath the dwarf's tame inferno. As Mara and Cade limped toward the nearest medical cradle, she cast one last look at the inner rail. There, faint but indelible, two parallel scorch marks traced the arc where Knight and Cavalier had chained lances across a luminous stream. Evidence that sometimes weapons forged for destruction might yet kindle salvation. The star burned on, caged but alive, illuminating the broken, hopeful faces of those who had fought, of those who had fallen, and of those who would carry impossible stories back to worlds in desperate need of better legends.